the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? All right. I think we made it work. It works. Sorry, guys. I have no idea what happened. Anyway, it turns out that sometimes rebooting your computer is just a good idea, and starting over, wiping everything clean, getting everything new. Maybe should do that before every show. Oh, God. Something just happened. It's not. Why didn't that open? All right. I'm suspicious that more bad stuff is happening. I think I've got a computer problem here. Word is like crashing now. All right. Can't keep Word up. All right. Let's see. We'll open. Don't know. All right. Anyway, it sounds good now. We've got good sound, and there's a lot to talk about. And Super Chat, I'm not sure how Super Chat's going to work today because I can't open any Word doc. All right. We're going to open up a notes page and take it from there. I did manage, I think, to copy all the previous questions onto a Word document. So once I get Word going, we can use that. It just won't be today. So we will. The questions you asked, if you want them today, you're gonna have to ask them again. Otherwise, they're gonna go. Okay. Anyway, I'm back from OCON. It was a great conference. It was fantastic meeting many of you there. That was a lot of fun. Thank you for all of you who came up and thank me and express your support. Thanks for everybody who came up and showed your support. I really appreciate that. So thanks, guys. My sidekick could also double as a studio producer. Sidekick would not be in my studio. Part of the challenge of having a sidekick is it would have to be remote. There's not going to be anybody here. I mean, the producer, the issue here was basically the need to reboot the computer after a week of not being here. So I don't know. It's working. That's what's important. All right, a few things. Thanks for the support, guys. A few things. So I have been, somebody at the conference came up to me and said, Ron came up to me at the conference and said, look, all this talk about money in the middle of the show, it's distracting. It cheapens the show. For those of us who watch the show later, it's not that engaging because you're really interacting with the chat. And the fact is that the minority of people watch it live. Most people watch it later. And then a lot of people listen to it on podcasts. They don't even watch it. So it's just distracting. So he said, look, I'll pay you not to discuss money in the middle of the show. At the beginning, at the end, but nothing in the middle. Which means Allie has to be on her own. It's all up to Allie to raise the money, and you just need to shut up. So it doesn't mean not interacting with the super chat or with the chat board. It just means not asking for money. Hey, we're at $200. Let's go to $600 and all of that. So he's suggesting that it probably reduces my monthly support because a lot of people are turned off by it and don't even listen to it. So he paid me. So we're going to experiment over the next 5 shows with me basically reminding you that we have a $600 goal at the beginning of the show, and me reminding you about contributing at the end of the show, but going for the rest of the show without really discussing money. So right now, I'll remind you, This show is funded by you. You guys make the show possible. You make it possible by supporting the show. You can support the show monthly as a contributor, as a regular contributor. By contributing on PayPal, go to my website, YaronBrookShow.com/support, or you can go to Patreon, a subscribe star, Yaron Brook Show, and you can become a monthly supporter there. You can also support the show by Super Chat right here, right now. And you can do that by asking a question. And it's great because I'll answer your question. And it turns out that the more money you put in the Super Chat, the more likely it is for me to actually answer your question. So feel free to use the Super Chat for that purpose. Ask the question, and I will answer. Ali is on the Super Chat. She's on the chat. She will remind you. She will keep track of how far we're going. I will not remind you. And that is all I have to say about the intro. Landon says, everyone should come to Ocon 2022 and play Yaron at poker. Yes, you should. That was an unexpected blast. Yaron is right. Less solicitation would increase viewers. Okay, we're soliciting less. By the way, I almost won at poker, but I was beaten by Robbie Segler and his son, who colluded. It was clear collusion and illegal in my view, but it was collusion nonetheless. Michael asked, did you save all the Super Chat questions before rebooting? I did save them. They're on my Super Chat document, which I saved, but I cannot open it right now because my computer's giving me problems. So I might not be able to get to them today. I'll get to them on a future show. So they're all on a Word document, and I'll have to figure out how to do that. Anyway, Ocon was fantastic. I encourage all of you to come next year. It's in Washington, D.C., over the July 4th weekend, so it's that's particularly exciting. You can already sign up. I think there are probably deep discounts. The earlier you sign up, the bigger the discount. Ocon was focused on a celebration of OPA, Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff, and which is, of course, an amazing book. I did the keynote lecture on the value of OPA when it comes up online. I hope all of you will watch it. I will definitely have it on my channel, and it'll be accessible to you on the channel as well. So I thought it was a good talk. I was pretty nervous before I gave the talk. After all, it was a talk about Peikoff and OPA and, my hero. And that is always a challenge. You want to live up to that. Yay! All the Super Chats have come back, Michael, so no need to reapply them. I've got them. And I know Michael asked 2 and Daniel asked 1. I'll get to that. I'll get to the Super Chat questions in a little while. But Ocon was really terrific. A lot of good lectures, a lot of good camaraderie. I think people had a blast. A lot of first-timers had a lot of fun. And somebody, Landon says, a lot of math and finance PhDs at Ocon. I don't know if they were at the poker tournament. It was an actual poker tournament. Very worthwhile. But it was, generally it was a terrific conference. Dave says AI's solid team of intellectual movement is unstoppable. I agree. But Dave, you weren't at the conference. Where were you? You should have come to Ocon. God, you guys should come to Ocon. I mean, what we'll do next year is, if you promise to come to Ocon, we'll do like a special event for the Yaron Brook Show listeners. We'll do I'll get them to set some time aside, and we'll do like a special Q&A or a special live show from the main stage for your Yaron Brook Show listeners. So that'll be fun. So hopefully you can come. I know a lot of you were there, but I think more of you can come. And again, Washington, D.C., end of June, early July next year, going into, I think it starts July 2nd or something, covers July 4th. So July 4th will be a blast. It'll be a good time. I can do my annual emotional inspiring July 4th show from the conference for everybody. A lot of good speeches. We saw a play, Manavana, one of my favorite plays. We saw a live performance of the play by Austin Shakespeare. It was terrific. And I hope those of you who were there enjoyed it as much as I do. And I'm excited about it. Dave, he says, I'm so eager for your review of Saving Private Ryan. Ryan, I will get to it. I've already rented it on iTunes, and my wife has agreed to watch it with me. So I think this week we'll be watching it. And there were about 400 people at OCON, about 200 people virtual, but people coming in and out. So I don't know that at any given point there were 400, but there were 400 in and out over the week at the various events. So it was great. Even Michael Malice showed up at the poker tournament. So for what's that worth? For what it's worth. I might be doing Michael Malice's show soon. So I might be on his podcast soon. So stay tuned for that as well. That should be interesting. Let's see. All right, let's. So I want to say one more thing. The conference was in Austin, Texas. One of the amazing things that's happening is that the entire objectivist movement is moving to Austin. Dave Goodman, I know you think you're moving to Miami. Skip Miami. Austin is the place. Austin is the center of objectivism today. It's truly amazing. I'd say, I don't know, half of our intellectuals today live in Austin. Much of the Einman Institute staff lives in Austin. And just regular people that I've known for years, have recently moved to Austin. So we are seeing more and more people in Austin, Texas. And that's exciting. Austin, of course, is the place where I lived when I first came to the United States. I spent 6 years in Austin. It is a great city. It is a wonderful place to live, particularly if you can leave in the summer and not stay there. It has great music. It has a film festival. It is creative. It has hills. It's green. It has a lake. It has water. It has a nudist beach. It has great restaurants. It just has everything going for it. So move to Austin. Maybe we can create a objectivist hub in Austin. Oh no, Austin's much nicer than Houston. Houston's a massive, flat, uninteresting city. Austin is young and exciting and very culturally active, opera and concerts and plays and ballet and really everything. Yeah, it has a nudist beach, Tessie. It does. On the Lake Travis. It's called Hippie Hollow. It's where all the hippies go. And it doesn't get quite as humid as Houston, but it is humid. Houston is in a category of itself with New Orleans and some coastal Alabama and places like that. So Austin is high tech. It's a university town. It's young. It really is. It's one of the best places in the world to live. So move over to Austin. Come on, guys. Anyway, I'm excited about the fact that so many people are in Austin. That way, I can stay in Puerto Rico, but I can visit, and I can visit you in Austin when you're there and talk. The other thing that were recommended to me in terms of the show, nobody paid me to do this, is that I need to move further back, that I get too close to camera, that I need to move further back and talk from here. So I'm going to try that. I need to get like something between me and the desk to separate me. But we'll do that because I think this distance is probably better for the video. And let me know what you guys think. So Austin, Texas is a great city. OCON was fantastic. And I was all excited about Texas. Yes, go Texas. There were no mask requirements almost anywhere. Some private businesses, but generally Austin, Texas, and Texas more broadly. But then, I don't think I need a clip-on mic because the mic is right here. and you can still hear me. I don't think there's any problem with the sound. I do have a clip-on mic, but the mic I have here is much better than the clip-on mic, so I'd like to keep it. Anyway, I can stand back here. You can still hear me, and we still have the microphone. Anyway, I was all excited about Austin, excited about Texas. I'm generally a fan of Texas. And then the Texas legislature and the governor had to go sign this abortion bill, which reinforces all the bad stuff about Texas. Bible Belt, primitive, backward, religious, just horrible, right? This abortion ban is on multiple levels, particularly disgusting and awful. It's the worst I've ever seen. I can't think of a law in the way this is structured right now that is setting a worse precedent. It's both ignorant and evil, and it's just an anti-constitutional, and just not just unconstitutional, anti-constitutional. Now, what does the law actually say? I mean, there are two parts of the law. The first is straight out, we want to limit abortion. So the first is, you can't have an abortion after 15 weeks. Heartbeat law. Once you can hear the heartbeat, and depending on science, that might change over time when you can actually hear a heartbeat. Abortion is banned as soon as you can hear a heartbeat. So to hell with the mother's life, to hell with the plans, to hell with everything. Many women don't know that they're pregnant before there is a heartbeat, before there's 15 months. So to hell with a woman's, responsibility for her own body. To hell with the idea that a woman is an autonomous entity. No, she has to basically be serve as a parasite for the fetus, who has rights when she doesn't. So she has no right to determine what happens with her body, no right to determine what happens with a clump of cells inside her body, no right, even though she is an actual human being, we must sacrifice this actual human being for a potential human being. Why? On what basis? By what standard? Well, by the standard of altruism, by the standard of revelation, by the standard of some religious guy decided that life begins at conception, human life begins at conception, and therefore human life must be protected from conception. But that is nonsense. A clump of cells at 1 month, 2 months, it's not a human being, it's a clump of cells. It's alive like all your cells are alive. Yeah, 6 weeks, you're right. Sorry, 6 weeks. 6 weeks is heartbeat. So women who do not want to have the child will be forced to carry to term because they did not act in time before 6 weeks because they didn't know they were pregnant. 6 weeks is not human life in any meaningful sense. It is a clump of cells organized around having a heart. Lots of animals have a heart. That doesn't make you human. Now, in my view, abortion should be legal even if one could argue it's immoral up until birth. And you could argue about the last trimester. But 6 weeks is absurd. It is ridiculous. It's immoral. It's just giving in to nutty religionists, what makes a heartbeat a human life? Why does a heartbeat make a difference? It doesn't. It's just one more step towards banning abortion altogether. Of course, some of the consequences are that, the abortion pill, the pill that you take after you have sex, I guess in a few days afterwards, it aborts the fetus. Demand for that pill has gone through the roof. I mean, women will not take this pill right after sex every time. Why even risk it? Why wait 6 weeks? Who knows what the consequence of significant increased use of these pills is going to have? But abortion is completely moral. It is the pursuit of your life. It is a choice that you make about how to deal with your body, your life, your future, and the potential child's future. If you don't want it, what kind of childhood is it going to have? What kind of life is it going to have? I'm not even talking about the fact that children with genetic problems, children that can never have a proper life, children that might grow up in constant pain, deformed, crippled, whatever. So what we have is Texas declaring that in the name of what? In the name of religion, you do not have any more control over your own life. You do not have any more control over your own body. You do not have any more control over your own future. Now, I think this is the way the Supreme Court was heading anyway. I think in that sense, Roe versus Wade is dead. I think it is just a matter of time now before abortion becomes illegal in certain states like Texas. Luckily, there are states, call them blue states, where abortion will remain legal. But it's going to get tougher and tougher. Women who get pregnant will have to travel further and further. Many more women will have illegal abortions, will have, back of the alley abortions, putting the woman's life at risk and the doctors, of course, at risk of going to jail. I mean, the consequences of outlawing abortion are particularly horrific for women, for children, for doctors who are willing to do abortions. And of course, what you're going to see is you're going to see people driving long distances in order to get their abortion done, because this will be left to state law to determine. So the Supreme Court will punt this. They won't rule for abortion or against abortion. They will just say, leave it to democracy. Democracy. We'll let the majority decide. Let the majority decide. I mean, it is truly medieval, primitive, and a consequence of altruism. It's okay to sacrifice. Sacrifice the living for the unliving. Sacrifice the actual for the potential. But, that shouldn't surprise you. And of course, knowledge doesn't come from reason, doesn't come from science. Nobody's interested in the science of a fetus at 3 months. What they're interested in is in revelation. God said, I don't even know where God said it exactly, but somebody said, some pope said, some authority, some religious authority said somewhere at some point, that life begins at conception, that abortion is wrong and evil, and everybody follows. Why is abortion wrong and evil? They don't know. They don't know. Yes, I suspect God never said it. But of course, God doesn't exist, so of course God never said it. But somebody said it. It doesn't matter who exactly said it. All that matters is that people believe that that somebody is an authority. That is a religious mentality. It's a mentality of authoritarianism. It's a mentality of accepting something based on authority. But there's a sense in which the second part of this bill out of Texas is even worse than just the straight opposition to abortion. Because the second part of the bill basically says, as I understand it, that anybody who does an abortion, facilitates an abortion, aids in doing an abortion, aids in bringing a person to an abortion, is liable not criminally, because they can't do that, because abortion is still legal in the United States based on Roe versus Wade, but is liable civilly. They can be sued, not by the government. Again, that would be protected under Roe versus Wade, but privately, by individuals. Anybody can sue. This is, Brian says this is the rights version of social justice. This is much worse than social justice. The social justice warriors can harass you. They can do real damage to your life by harassing you, by going to your employer, by putting pressure on people not to employ you, by all of that stuff. It is really, really, really bad. But this is worse. Because this is the ability to sue somebody. Let's say you're an Uber driver. And as I understand it, you take a woman to the clinic to get an abortion. Joe Schmo, who lives in Texas, can sue you. Indeed, there's an entire website dedicated to file a lawsuit against an abortion clinic, against Planned Parenthood, against doctors, against Uber drivers, against anybody who's assisted the abortion. Anybody who assisted the woman in getting an abortion. Now, this is using the legal system in a perverted, distorted, disgusting way. Thessie, thank you. Apollo, thank you. It's a complete perversion of justice. And our legal system prevents you from suing somebody unless you can show that you were impacted. You have to have in our legal system generally standing in order to sue. Standing means the thing that happened has to have affected you in some way. Basically what this law does is it gives everybody standing. Now imagine if this was the left and they said, you can sue anybody who speaks ill of you, anybody who you find insulting. Now there you at least have cause because it's you were insulted. You can sue anybody for doing anything that you find immoral, that you find offensive. That's basically what this law says. Apply to abortion. I mean, if this law is accepted, and the Supreme Court has refused to deny it yet, it's still going to go up to the law, to it. Right? So this is, put it mildly, insanity. A complete distortion and perversion of our legal system. Giving random people power over other people's lives. Why? Because they disagree with them. It's a violation of our freedoms. It is not just unconstitutional, and I don't know what provision of Constitution we would have to go by, but it's anti-constitutional because it goes against everything that the Constitution represents. Yeah, Adams says, even selling gas to a woman who is driving to New Mexico will subject the gas seller to ruinous lawsuits. There is no way any sane woman will move to Austin. Nor will any sane heterosexual male. That's a quick way to kill the objectivist movement. It is sick that this would pass as law, that Republicans or anybody would pass this. Republicans who say they care about the rule of law, Republicans who claim to stand by the Constitution. This eliminates the relevance of a Constitution. It wipes out the meaning of the Constitution. It's complete insanity. And people say, Yaron, you should attack only the left. Don't attack the right, only the left. Because they're the real evil destroying this country. Well, not in Texas, I'll tell you. In Texas, the real evil destroying Texas is the right. It's these religious fanatics. It's laws like this. Yes, I know, Best Fake Hank, that we don't have a constitution anymore. The left and the right have destroyed it, eviscerated, emptied it of content. Now we will see if the Supreme Court upholds this law. We will see if 5 so-called originalists, 6 conservatives, will actually think this is legitimate law. We will see whether they're willing to uphold the right of a woman to have an abortion. Probably not in the end. But whether they would tolerate a law like this, I can't imagine it. I still hope that the Supreme Court will rule against it. A lower court has already ruled against it, so right now, no more lawsuits. Oh, and here's one. GoDaddy has announced that it will not host the website of the non-for-profit that is encouraging the lawsuits and actually creating a list of names of people who want to sue and facilitating the lawsuits. So here's an example where I commend a web platform for deplatforming a website. It is so disgusting. It is so absurd. It is so ridiculous. It is so anti-everything this country stands for. That yes, it's good to know that there are some people in the technology business who are willing to deplatform a site so that they can't facilitate this madness. Come here. Sue whoever you want. Here's a list of people who are facilitating abortions. Sue them randomly. So good for GoDaddy for canceling this website. I can't remember the name of the website. I'll get it for you. But oh wait, I have to all this stuff. I closed the other news article I wanted to read to you. Alan Dershowitz, by the way. Some of you like Alan Dershowitz. Some of you hate Dr. Winters. I'm not a big fan. But Alan Dershowitz actually has a good op-ed on the Texas lawsuit, and he's good. He basically says the Texas abortion ban is unconstitutional. You can find that. I'll tell you in a minute where it's published, but it's definitely worth reading. Let's see. It's in Newsweek.com. Newsweek.com. So Texas law is unconstitutional. Alan Dershowitz, he has some of the details about what it entails. But there was, all right, so let me just see. All right, there we go. All right, now that brings me to this story about COVID, which I'm not going to talk about too much about COVID today. And by the way, because COVID is in the title of the YouTube, we have a warning from the CDC to let you know that you should really look at the WHO a warning from Twitter. You should look at the WHO when it comes to CDC. Somebody said, didn't Dershowitz defend Epstein? Yeah, and Dershowitz was a good friend of Epstein, and Dershowitz is accused of raping some of the women in Epstein's thing. So Dershowitz is but he was a huge Trump fan, huge Trump supporter. So a lot of you like him because he supported Trump. So in the context of religion and the South, and in this case, we're going from abortion to COVID because religion is screwing people over in both cases. So let's talk about COVID. So Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves, this is the governor of Mississippi, he said, and I'm quoting, I'm often asked by some of my friends on the other side of the aisle about COVID. And why does it seem like folks in Mississippi and maybe in the Mid-South are a little less scared, shall we say? He goes on. When you believe in eternal life, when you believe that living on this earth is but a blimp on a screen, then you don't have to be so scared of things. He added, now God also tells us to take necessary precautions. And we all have an opportunity and ability to do that. And we should all do that. I encourage everybody to do that. But the reality is that working together, we can get beyond this. We can move forward. We can move on. Yeah, we can move on to the afterlife. Let me repeat the key sentence. When you believe in eternal life, when you believe that living on this earth is but a blimp on the screen, then you don't have to be so scared of things. All right. I've always wondered, if people believe that heaven is so wonderful, why don't they commit suicide? Or why are they sad when people die if things on the other side are so wonderful? If they're so confident of heaven, why is anybody afraid of dying who's religious? God. So this is what we face in this country. We face a religion that would ban, a religion and a right wing that would ban a woman's ability to have an abortion, that would institute laws that basically create complete havoc with our legal system, allow people to sue anybody that behaves in ways that the powers to be view as inappropriate. In this case, the inappropriate behavior is abortion. Could be any other inappropriate behavior. As you know, I believe, anyway, so we have a right that believes that shouldn't worry about too much about COVID, because after all, this is just, life here is just a blimp. I mean, the real interesting stuff, the real fun stuff, the real important stuff happens in the next life. So what's the big deal? Why be afraid? Don't worry, be happy. COVID, schmovid. If God wants you to die, then God wants you to die. And you should just embrace it. We have a right that is dominated by religion, that is intolerant of alternative views, that does not just want to argue, but wants to force. Wants to force itself on all of us. He says, you seem to have just been gaslighted. Gaslighting. Learn what gaslighting is. Is it possible you don't see woke as real evil because you haven't heard of their tactics? No, I do see woke as a real evil. Why don't I see woke as real evil? I was just getting there, actually. I was just about to say. And you have the left with its woke culture and cancel culture and new Puritanism. You have to say only what they accept. You have to behave in ways that only they approve of. You have to get permission. Or just don't do anything, and then you can avoid it all. You have a religious left that has its code of commandments, of what's acceptable and what is not. You have a religious right that it has its codes and commandments. And we, the individuals, we don't matter. We don't have a say in any of this. There's a good essay in The Atlantic. I think it's this month. I think it's the lead essay in The Atlantic. The Atlantic, left magazine. The lead essay in The Atlantic this month is called The New Puritans. And it is a broadside attack on the new attitude at our universities and our cultural institutions all across the board, where people have to behave in a certain way. And there's no due process. If they don't behave in this particular way, out they go. And while most people don't necessarily accept this new Puritanism, they keep quiet because they're afraid. So people who might have touched somebody, okay, you know, I hugged her when I shouldn't have hugged her. Sorry is not acceptable. If you do it, you have to lose your job, get sued for sexual harassment, never publish another academic paper. Ann Applebaum, who I'm pretty sure is a lefty, documents over and over again the professors who said the wrong thing, or didn't even say the wrong thing. Allow somebody who published in their magazine, did a podcast unrelated to what they were doing, and said something inappropriate. And they get blamed because they published an article by the person who says something that's inappropriate. I've talked about this before on shows. And you can go on and on and on in terms of the kind of the attitude of the left today is like the Cultural Revolution in China. You brought up in front of courts, unseen, no due process. The whispers. People don't want to associate you because if they associate with you, they get canceled. Sentences are passed, not by courts, not after reviewing evidence, but by anonymous committees who often don't even tell you who accused you of what. Now again, it's not the state, it's not the government, but we're creating a culture of fear. The left dominates the culture. Therefore, it's creating a culture of fear, a culture of silence, a culture of self-censorship, a culture where people don't speak up, where people don't express themselves. The right, at least at the state level, dominates politics. It dominates the legislatures. So it can pass laws that limit a woman's right to her own body, a woman's right to her own decisions, a woman's right to her own life. Restricts her choices. They can pass laws. Or just dictate behavior that basically indicates to people, oh, if you die of COVID, no big deal. Because after all, you'll go to heaven. Everything will be wonderful over there. So don't worry. They can pass laws that tell private companies, you can't play it safe. You can't demand vaccines. We think people who are unvaccinated should be able to trample on your property whenever they want, however they want. Like in Florida, not allowing cruise ships to demand proof of vaccine in order to take a cruise. one of the reasons it's so depressing right now in America, it's because there is nobody standing up for liberty. It's so depressing right now in America because both left and right have given up on liberty. And yes, woke is evil. The left is evil. Woke culture, woke whatever, cancel culture. The whole thing is evil. It's wrong. It's bad. But in opposition to it, the right has its own woke. It has its own variation. It has its own way of trampling on our rights, trampling on our liberties, trampling on the Constitution. So yeah, I see the threat from the left. I see the tactics of the left and the evil of the left and everything the left are doing. I've seen it for decades and decades and decades. I've been fighting the left for 40 years. The big difference today is that while the right was always weak and pathetic, and now it's not just weak and pathetic, now it's actively advocating, actively engaged in destroying our liberty, in destroying our freedom. I mean, Rand always saw this day would come. She knew it would happen. Thank you, best friend Hank. That's why she didn't vote for Ronald Reagan in 1980. Because she saw the religious right dominating and taking over the right. It's very, very depressing to see the world as it is. And then, I just came across this story today, and another story a few days ago, actually, on Afghanistan. The U.S. is reaching deals with the Taliban to get more people out or sending it list. I mean, it is just really, really sad to see, really pathetic to see. Maybe this creates space. Maybe this creates space as the right goes nuts, as the left goes right. Maybe it creates space for better people. That's my hope. What we need to carve out is better space. Brian says something, I think, right. I think Iran has been vindicated. The left can't govern. Yeah, we've seen that with Biden. They can't govern. They can't organize anything. They can't, they're a disaster. Look at New York State. Look at New York City. Look at Chicago. And the right can't be reasoned with. No, they're completely obsessed with authoritarians and God. I mean, religion basically conditions you for authoritarianism. Because what is religion? Religion is acceptance of authoritarianism in epistemology. It conditions you to accept the word of God based on what? Whatever. You accept a morality based on what? Based on commandments, based on scriptures, not based on logic, not based on reason, not based on evidence. So, religion, in a sense, necessitates or leads one to authoritarianism. So you got a left that's authoritarian, destructive, evil, and you've got a right, but a left that is also disintegrated, and therefore cannot govern, and therefore cannot get anything done. Therefore, all it creates is mayhem and destruction. And you've got a right that responds to the mayhem and destruction, not with freedom and liberty, not with calls for individual rights, but with calls for authoritarianism in one way or another. And certainly, anti-abortion is authoritarianism. It's the state. It's the state dictating to a woman how they should live, what they should do, how they should behave. And it's part of the anti-sex view of Christianity, part of the whole original sin view. I mean, you've seen here in the chat that people say, well, you know, if you don't want to have an abortion, don't have sex. Yeah, anti-sex. One of the great things about safe, cheap abortion is that we can have sex. We fear sex less. We can enjoy sex more. There are no unborn children here. They're fetuses that are not children. They're potential. See, you've got a fundamental epistemological, metaphysical confusion. Something that will become and can become an individual human being is not a human being yet. It's a potential human being. There's a huge difference between a potential and an actual. They are fetuses. Children are children. Children are after they're born. Before they're born, they're not children. Sorry. Biology, anatomy, at 2 weeks, a clump of cells. That's not a child. That's a clump of cells with the potential to become a child, but it's not a child. That's a massive, faith-based evasion to confuse potentiality with actuality. Somebody's saying, why don't I debate a Catholic? I'd love to debate a Catholic. Bring it on, Catholics. I'd love to debate a pro-abortion Catholic or common good conservative Catholic. I'll take any of those Catholics on. Bring an audience, I'll debate you. Life as what? Cells have life. Cells are life. Human life does not begin until it's born. And yes, maybe there's some cognition going on in a sense of sense perception, or maybe there's some brain activity going on in the final trimester. But in the first trimester, in the second trimester, that's not human life. Human potentiality will become human life if left alone. It's not human life. No, I'm not wrong. You guys are just blinded. Blinded. And if you think it's human life at age 1 week, then that's massive evasion. If you look at a clump of cells at 1 week and say that's a child, then you don't know how to form concepts. You don't know what concepts mean. You can't have a circle with a bunch of cells and say that's a human being. Doesn't have a brain yet, doesn't have legs yet, doesn't have a stomach yet. That's not a human being. Yeah, have sex as much as you want. Nobody really wants an abortion, so take care. But if you get pregnant, yes, take an abortion pill or get an abortion. Absolutely. Please don't have a child if you don't want a child. All right, yes, but the attitude is anti-sex. It's ultimately Christian. It's ultimately faith-based, religious-based, an evasion of science, an evasion of individual rights. There's no individual. There's a parasite on the mother, not an individual. All right. Why don't you take the morning after pill? I'm all for the morning after pill. But it's not probably healthy to take the morning after pill after every time you have sex. Keep the morning after pill to emergencies when you know something went wrong. But that's the problem, is that because of the Texas law, women are now going to use the morning after pill after every act of sex. And that's unbelievably unhealthy. All right, let's see. Yeah, contraceptives are great. Everybody should use contraceptives. They're just not perfect. Accidents happen. And you shouldn't have to suffer an unwanted child. And the child shouldn't have to suffer being unwanted as a consequence of an accident. All right, guys, I'm not going to debate with the chat on abortion. I wish there were rational arguments against abortion, but I just haven't seen any. I just see statements and declarations and all caps, right? All right, let's see. Let's do a couple of $20 Super Chat questions, and then I am going to talk about this documentary that I finally reviewed, Spider's Web. Ooh. And we're going to talk about Spider's Web, the documentary, and then I'll take some of the lower dollar amount Super Chat questions. Okay, Brian asks, if I were to author an article about the importance of rational law, what kind of criteria might you use for selecting a magazine or newspaper to publish it in? Do you have a preference? It's a tricky question, Brian, because it depends on what's your purpose of writing the article for, right? So you could think of writing a scholarly article with the idea of trying to influence law professors and intellectuals who deal with law, and then you would try to publish it in a law review journal. That is an academic law review journal. Which law students read, law professors read, and you might have an impact on the profession. Lawyers read. But if you want to, for the public on rational law, I don't know. Maybe a publication like Atlantic would be great if you could get in, if you could get it published. It would be hard. So I'm not sure what other publications would accept an article on rational law. It would depend on the context. It would depend what else but it would depend a lot of it on what your goals are. Thomas Schubaum asks, should the U.S. Congress have declared war on Afghanistan in 2001? I don't think so. I think what should have happened in November of 2001 is the U.S. Congress should have declared war on all organizations advocating for and acting on behalf of all countries, organizations acting on behalf of and supporting Islamic totalitarianism or jihadism or the very many other names it has. And then the war would have not been with Afghanistan per se. It would have been with the Taliban. And we would have gone and destroyed the Taliban. And it would have been with Al-Qaeda. And it would have been with the Saudis, many people in Saudi Arabia. It would have been with Iran. It would have been with Islamic Jihad and Hamas and Hezbollah and ISIS. And there was no ISIS then. But anybody who at any point becomes an advocate for violent jihad is our enemy, and we're at war with you, and we will act to destroy you. Congress should have articulated that. It's a different type of declaration of war. It's not like a declaration of war on a country. It's a declaration of war on a politicized ideology. It's political manifestation. That is, it's active manifestation in terrorist organizations, political organizations, and countries like Iran. If the Taliban is the will of the Afghan people, then the will of the Afghan people needs to be broken. And it would be broken if the Taliban was crushed. The Taliban was the government of Afghanistan, yes. And you could have declared war on Afghanistan. Sure. Yeah, it could, as part of this broader declaration. Afghanistan, like Iran, would have been one of the countries listed. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah. Diego says, life is not personhood. That's right. Life is not personhood. Life is not human life. Life is not individual human life. How can one study history objectively? Most seem to study it by assuming hypothesis and looking for evidence that supports or contradicts it. Isn't that biased? You could only highlight facts that support your claim. Yeah, I mean, the way to study history objectively is to study the facts. Study what actually happened. So find history books, find historians that specialize in telling you what happened. So I think the way to study it, it used to be that historians had this attitude of telling us the facts of what was actually happening, and rather than just their Marxist interpretation or their patriotic interpretation or whatever interpretation it was, they just gave you the facts and you got to interpret it. Now, you'd have to go find those books. And one way to try to tease out the facts versus the interpretation is to read both sides, to read a variety of different histories. And maybe from those, you can tease out what actually happened versus the interpretation. Maybe you can, if they're not lying, figure out what is their bias and what is not. It's hard. It's hard. And I wish we had better historians, better history. The Taliban are not normal Afghans. The Taliban are a particular force within Afghanistan. There was no Taliban before the Taliban. There was no Taliban in the 60s and 50s in Afghanistan. Or if there was, there were people who believed in the Taliban, but they were a minority, and they were in the countryside, and much of the country didn't function based on those ideas. So the Taliban are they are the most radical, consistent of the Islamists, of the Muslims in Afghanistan. But if the Taliban was defeated thoroughly, then Afghanistan would stop being pro-Taliban. They're pro-Taliban because the Taliban are winners. So there's nothing that says Afghanistan has to be. They didn't just stick around to take back power. They fought for 20 years to take back power. They took advantage of every weakness of Americans. They took advantage of every moral weakness of the Afghan government, which was filled with corruption, which America supported. And they chipped away at us. They killed us. They attacked us. They just kept chipping away. And that had an enormous impact on the morale of Americans. It had an enormous impact on the morale of Afghans. And Afghans came to support them because they came to believe that they would win. So we defeated ourselves in Afghanistan. It's not that the Taliban defeated us. We defeated ourselves. There's absolutely no reason we couldn't have crushed them. All right. I want to talk about Spider's Web. So I can't remember who it was, but one of you paid me money to watch Spider's Web. Spider's Web is a documentary. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. And you asked me to review it. So here's my review of Spider's Web. It's terrible. It's a good example of the biased history that you guys were talking about earlier. Spider's Web has this thesis. The thesis is it's been watched massively. Millions of people have watched this. Oh, Troy, thank you. Wow. Troy is in the house. All right. Under lockdown in Australia, I take it. There's a good picture of Australia. It shows the whole island. And it's called, I think the heading is something like a prison nation. And, a nation of prisoners. And you think about it, yeah, it was founded by prisoners. And now everybody's under house arrest. So Spider's web. So Spider's web, this is the thesis that England used to have an empire. And that empire, to a large extent, was managed from the city of London, from the financiers at London. It's a hugely anti-financier documentary. And the idea is that when the empire collapsed, the city of London wanted to maintain its power and wanted to maintain its control. And to maintain its power and control, it to maintain its control, it basically established in the post-empire era a system of, call it, what do they call it in the documentary? They call it, basically offshore banking, secret banking, banks that allow you, don't ask questions, where you open accounts, where, shadow banking. It's where people can use it in order to hide ill-gotten money, avoid taxation. And they created a network of these places, Cayman Islands, and a number of different former British colonies, all established these financial entities to help the rich avoid taxes and to funnel money into the city of London, which makes money off of money. And it's all, the whole documentary is all phrased as if it's one big conspiracy theory. These people are running the world. And, there's a whole section of how this is screwing Africa. How is it screwing Africa? Think about it this way. Africa has, I'm just going to make up some numbers. Africa has debt of $100 billion, let's say. And, but it turns out that the various dictators, authoritarians of Africa, they're never called dictators or authoritarians in the documentary. The leaders of African countries have funneled about $900 billion into some of these bank accounts all over the world. They've stolen their own people's money and put them in their bank accounts. Now, God forbid, here's my Catholic coming out of me, that you actually blame the dictators for stealing the money. You blame the populace for tolerating the dictators for stealing the money. You blame the elites in African countries for allowing the dictators to steal the money. No. You can't blame those people. Because after all, they're weak. They've got dark skin and we don't blame them for anything. They're all victims. I mean, it's so racist not to blame them. It's so racist to treat them differently. Mike, thank you. So we don't blame the Africans. Who do we blame? We blame the bankers who make it possible. We blame the City of London that has created this network of banks that allow people to hide their money. Now, this is just nuts. Of course, it assumes that the only purpose of money, the only purpose of creating money is to pay taxes. In a free world, in a capitalist world, there'd be 100% privacy in banks. To get any information about anybody from a bank, you'd need a subpoena. Why is it anybody's business what I have in my bank account? Why is it anybody's business how much money I made last year? It's only the statists, the authoritarians, the collectivists, who think that my money is theirs. Now, the example in Africa is stealing. But one has to condemn the theft. One has to condemn the people who commit the theft. It's none of the banker's business where the money came from. It's government's responsibility. Up to police, not bankers. Bankers are not policemen. It's not the banker's job. It's absurd. I mean, the documentary is filled with falsehoods. It talks about the euro dollar. It talks about the creation of this whole banking system and the euro dollar market. But these banking systems and the euro dollars were built primarily to get around regulation. But I'm for getting around regulation. I think it's great to get around regulation. I think it's wonderful to get around regulation. Regulation is government intervention. It's immoral. It's use of force against the productive. Now, I believe in catching fraudsters, putting them in jail. But one of the reasons you had a euro dollar market was because in the United States, until the 1980s, banks couldn't pay interest on checking accounts. Until recently, banks couldn't pay interest on corporate checking accounts. So what happened was corporations were pissed off. I mean, what are they going to do with the money? It's one of the reasons we have money market accounts. It's so the corporations can shift their money in overnight and get some interest on it because they're billions and billions and billions, if not trillions of dollars. The euro dollar market was created to allow American banks to deposit corporate checking accounts into European accounts overnight, get interest, so they could pay their corporate clients interest without breaking American law. Yeah, it's called regulatory arbitrage, and it's a wonderful thing. Yes, these banks, offshore banks, are used to avoid paying taxes. Yes, corporations use every trick in the book, legal, to try not to pay taxes. Good for them. There's no duty to pay your taxes. There's a duty to follow the law, maybe, right? Up to a point. But your duty is to shareholders, and part of that duty is to minimize the taxes that you pay. So I commend all these specialists who help people to evade taxes. You know, if they're doing it legally. And if you want to stop it, you know, close the loopholes, but even better, get rid of taxes. The simpler the taxes are, the lower the taxes are, the less evasion there is. Bankers are not conspirators. They're the victims of regulations and controls. And yes, they fight back. And they are massive innovators. They're amazing innovators in finding ways around the regulation. So, a documentary is, I mean, a bunch of what they say is true, but my evaluation of what happens there, my evaluation of what they did, is very, very different than their evaluation. So Spider's Web. Remember, Spider's Web, that you put out a web to what? To eat your prey, to catch your prey and kill it. But the Spider's Web in the documentary was to provide people with services. Legitimate services. Of getting around irrational government regulations and irrational government controls. All right. Let's see. All right. Let's do some of these questions. Were there any $20 questions? No $20 questions. All right. If you want to ask a question, you can do so on the Super Chat. Michael asks, Why do educated people tend to view arguments in favor of personal responsibility as naive or inhumane? Well, because they don't think that people have the ability to take care of themselves. They don't believe that people have the capacity to be responsible. Paternalism is good. We need the state, or we need the philosopher kings to tell us how to live, to guide us, to teach us, and so again, this is Plato's view. Most people, 90% of people are in the cave. They don't know what's good for them. They don't know what's right. They won't know what's just. They need an authority to tell them, to guide them. Otherwise, they're completely lost. So it's humane. It's humane to be paternalistic. I, on the other hand, believe that everybody's capable of reason. Everybody's capable of taking care of themselves. Everybody's capable of making choices for themselves. And nobody is capable of choosing for another human being. Balaji Srivin something was on Sam Harris. He pushed back on income inequality. It's worth a listen, especially the last hour. Good. You know, maybe Sam Harris will have me on one day. I'll have to check that out. Thanks. Michael asked, what did you think of General Moshe Dayan? Was he the Israeli Patton? No, I don't think he was the Israeli Patton. There was a lot of, he was mostly a good general from what I can tell. He was part of the guerrilla warfare against the British, and later in defending Israel in its first war, he was a successful general and then politician. But he was also a massive failure. His massive failure was that in 1973, he did not see the war coming in spite of intelligence reports. If he did, the army was ill-prepared in spite of the fact that he was defense secretary. And ultimately, his lack of preparedness, his lack of being willing to, stand up and alert the military and do what was necessary to defend the country at the time. There's some argument that he knew there was going to be a war, but he appeased the Americans, him and Golda Meir appeased the Americans, not to start anything preemptively, but you don't have to preempt it if you call up the reserves. Thousands of young kids died in that war, and you could argue it was Moshe Dayan's fault. So whatever legacy he has as a great general or great commander of troops was tarnished by his really, really pathetic performance in 1973 as defense minister. And the fact that the army was not prepared for the war that was engaged. Zalmi, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. Michael asks, can you rule out perpetual motion devices philosophically? I don't think so. I don't know. It seems like it is a denial of some laws of physics, but I don't know that it's a denial of any law in philosophy. So it seems like it's, I don't know. I don't know how, I can't even think of what a perpetual motion machine would be, but I can't think of a philosophical reason why you couldn't have a perpetual motion machine. There are obviously physics reasons why you can't have it. What do you think of, you asked me this, I already answered that. The left's response to this is Brian, the left's response to the right needs improvement. Yeah. Everything needs improvement. The left's response to the right response to the left. Andrew asks, conservatives cheering more Down syndrome children since women won't have the chance to know was disturbing. Yes. Generally, you can only discover if your child has Down syndrome later in a pregnancy. I think to bring a child into the world with Down syndrome is a travesty. It's unjust. It's not right for the kid. It's not right for the parents. It is disturbing, and it is consistent with the evil attitude, the just horrific attitude so many Christians have towards human life. If you valued human life, individual human life, then you would not want your child born with any kind of deformation of his means of knowledge or of his body. Why would you want a child who was deformed physically? And certainly, why would you want a child who's deformed mentally? So it's not a matter of eugenics. It's a matter of they're not born yet. I'm not for killing them when they were alive, but they're not born yet. Although if you saw some of the Zika babies who had nothing in their lives but pain, because they were born in such a with such deformities that it was just painful for them to be alive from the moment they were born until they passed away. That's just, and to not abort those children, which you couldn't in many Catholic countries where Zika was prevalent, like Brazil, it's just a travesty. It's just evil. It's evil. And hopefully the day will come when we'll be able to genetically change and make changes in the genes. But it's not some God placed the spirit into the child and therefore it's sacred and we can't. No, there is no God. And to bring a human being into this world who's only going to experience suffering is evil. And in that sense, not having an abortion is immoral. It's immoral not to abort a Zika baby, as they were described at least at the time. No, 50 Canadian dollars. I like the way you said it the other day. Consciousness is not a tool for manipulating reality. It is an awareness tool. Yes, it's the awareness of reality. But you see, so many on both left and right you want to pretend that they can create reality, manipulate reality, shape reality, change reality. Facts don't matter. Reality doesn't matter. What matters just is their consciousness, what they feel. All right, Bash Brannigan. I love that name. Wouldn't privacy laws prevent lawsuits proving an abortion took place? I don't know. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that would have to be worked out in courts. The practicality of it, the ability of this to actually happen. But I don't know. I don't know how robust privacy laws are. I don't know how strong they are, what they cover, what they don't cover. I'm not an expert on these kind of things. All right. Yeah, I mean, this website, this GoDaddy website was basically was a whistleblowing site. It was called on where you let people know anonymously about people having abortions and people helping people have abortions and anonymous tips. It was seeking anonymous tips about abortions that are taking place. Just sick. Thank you, GoDaddy, for stopping them. Let's see. John asks, just like a woman has a right to abort an unborn child, should the father have the right to abandon the baby if the woman decides to have it? Yes. I think that's probably right. I think the father, if he doesn't want the child, doesn't have a responsibility for bringing him up. I mean, abandon the baby to the extent that the woman has decided to have it, yes. I think the father only has responsibilities vis-a-vis the child. Those responsibilities he wants to take on himself. Right? Take on himself. All right, Themaster for 20 pounds asks, if someone had a Down syndrome kid and didn't know about it until they were born, would they have rights for termination? If so, why not? No, I don't think so. But it's because once it's born, it's human and it has rights, and you can't just decide whose life as an individuated being, whose life you get to keep and which life is terminated. I think if you could make the argument that a child that's born in severe pain and pain that will never go away should have its life terminated. But I don't think Down syndrome quite is at that level. I don't think it's at that level. But these are tricky issues, not simple issues around once it's born. Pretty easy, I think, before it's born. Once it's born, very, very difficult. Okay, Thessie asks, she's being a devil's advocate, what about Helen Keller? Bet people are happy she wasn't aborted. Yes, but I could completely understand the parents who would have decided we don't want a deaf, mute, blind child. And I'm completely sympathetic with that, and I'm fine with it. So, sure, you can find counterexamples, but you also have to take into account the parents and everything else, and in a sense, the miracle, right? That she found a teacher that could actually teach her. Otherwise, she would have stayed at the level of a non-human, at the level of an animal for the rest of her life. Oh, Anne Senmi says she was born sighted and able to hear. So she lost those abilities, so you wouldn't have aborted her anyway. And you know, so it's not... Anyway, it's not for you to decide. It's for the woman to decide whether she wants a Down syndrome baby or not. You know, some people want Down syndrome babies, and, you know, not want them, but if they have them, they're fine with it, and that's fine. Some people don't. I do not. I would have aborted. Why Moses asks, why are so many people taken by the idea of a fetus possessing rights? They claim it's a scientific issue and that a fetus gains right at conception. I disagree. It's clearly philosophical. It's philosophical and scientific. Certainly if you're talking about conception. Conception is not even a fetus. It's a sperm and an egg. There's some name for it, was zygote or something before fetus. So it's not scientific, but it's clearly philosophical. Rights are a philosophical concept. You don't gain rights biologically. There's no biology of rights. Rights are a moral concept. They're an idea. They're a requirement. It's safe for human beings to live in a social setting. But they're not primaries in a sense that they are, or intrinsic in the sense that they are somehow inside of me and you can't take it out. No, I mean, some people don't have rights. Criminals don't have rights. Murderers lose their rights. So it's not in you. So a fetus does not have rights because it's not a human being. It's not individuated. And that's just a fact. A biological fact. A fact proven in biology and in philosophy. Is Western Europe about 20 years deeper into their statism than we are, yet the fascist rights of DIM hasn't taken over England, France, or Germany? No, but it has taken over Hungary. And I don't think Western Europe's 20 years deeper into statism than we are. Not yet. And statism doesn't work exactly like that. It's not like, how much statism do you have today? And who's in charge right now? It doesn't, none of this works in some kind of formulaic way. It's a combination of the ideas and the culture and the particular individuals, and is there a charismatic leader who comes around, and what are the existential things that actually happen that promote a particular view? For example, did Europe have riots last summer? Did we have riots? Well, we had riots, so maybe the rioting is going to induce a response that won't happen over there. There's so many moving parts. And Europe is seeing, I don't think they're 20 years deeper into statism. I remember what measure. Denmark is less regulated than the United States. It has more redistribution than the US, but much more efficient redistribution than the US. Sweden is less regulated than the United States in many realms. Yeah, social spending, social protections, workers' rights in some parts of Europe are more than the United States, and some less. Environmental regulations in some areas are worse in Europe, in some areas are worse in the US. But, you know, they don't have critical race theory. They don't have cancel culture, not to the extent that we do. They don't have political correctness like we do. They don't, a lot of the sins of the left don't exist over there. They don't have Black Lives Matter. Not on the scale that we have it anyway. Sweden didn't lock down its residents. We did. So, but you are seeing not the rise of authoritarian left, but the rise of the authoritarian right in Eastern Europe. You're seeing it with Orban in Hungary. I'll do a show on Orban soon with the Tucker Carlson interview of him, one of the great travesties of the American right today. And you're seeing it to some extent in Poland. The only places you're seeing authoritarianism is on the right in Europe. So you're seeing, you know, we'll see what happens in France. But if Marine Le Pen comes to power, right-wing political parties in Europe are far stronger than left-wing political parties in Europe. The left is weak in Europe. I mean, yes, the left of center might win in Germany over the right of center, but it's not the crazy left. The crazy left is not a power in Europe. What's a power in Europe, much more so, is the right. Tucker Carlson is very talented. Yeah, he is. He's also, you know, an evasive, immoral, authoritarian, you know, irrational, I could go on, idiot. But he's very talented and very smart. Very smart. And has the biggest program in the world. So there you go. Incredibly evil little fascist. I like that. Z400 race 37. That's right. Incredibly evil little fascist. That's a good description. Scott asks, kudos for the CRT class at OAC. Should there be one of conservative nationalism or wherever the right-wing takeover is supposed to come from? I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I am debating a conservative nationalist in Austin on December 8th. So just look at Europe. It's full of right-wing takeovers. No left-wing takeovers. I'm trying to think of a European country taking over by the left. I mean, by the real left. All right. My professor is sympathetic with Marx, and many of the students are too. My professor said that Marx wanted equality and was misunderstood. Yeah, he wanted equality and he was well understood. And the way to achieve equality was to kill 100 million people. I mean, generally, the only way, yeah, the EU is left-wing takeover. And the response to the EU, I've always said, the left takes over, and then the response to the EU is right-wing. And the response to the American left will be from the right. And the response on a national by nation basis to the left is right. Why is this so hard to get? Read Marx. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to believe your professor. Just read Marx. He was genocidal. And it was clear what his philosophy has to lead to. It's clear what his philosophy has to lead to. And anybody who still makes excuses for Marx, there's blood in his hands. Can you say a few words on cultural appropriation? What do you think about using another culture, music, or style in a piece of art without being a part of that culture? I love it. I am massively for cultural appropriation. Only the good stuff, by the way. I mean, shitty culture should not be appropriated. Shitty culture, bad culture should be left to the people who invented it and have it. Right? So, it's I mean, I see no problem with cultural appropriation. I don't know what it even is, right? People create stuff and they put it out there into the world and yeah, use it. I mean, every composer who ever lived appropriates certain things from composers before him. You know, Beethoven learned from Mozart, who learned from Bach, and they learned from you know, more primitive, more ancient music. Anything, you should embrace anything beautiful, anything good, anything valuable. I mean, I'm all for cultural appropriation. That's why I think that in Africa and in South America and in Asia, they should embrace classical music. And they have. I mean, many of the great classical musicians today are Asians. How dare they? So the whole idea of knowledge is you build. It's you constantly build on the good stuff. The Greeks built on Egyptian sculpture, and the later Greeks built on the earlier Greeks, and the Renaissance built on the Greeks, and that's how you succeed. You don't have to invent everything yourself. That would be absurd and bizarre and anti-human cognition. That's not how cognition, not how creativity, not how the world works. So, thank you, Mike. So, of course you should use the good in other culture. If you're I don't know, if you're a really good Indian chef and you're not Indian, good for you. Why does anybody care what color skin you have? If you're a great Italian chef and you're not Italian, if you're a great Israeli chef and you're not Israeli, if you're a great British chef, oh no, sorry, there's no such thing as British. If you're a great French cook but you're British, why does anybody care? The only thing that matters is the good. The only thing that matters is it good. Of course, don't violate property rights. But cultural appropriation is not about property rights. It's about what? It's about learning and bettering and advancing and getting better at what you do. What's your comment on capitalism in India? What are your comments on reliance? I don't know what reliance is. What is the thing that's holding back India? Freedom, capitalism. So there is no capitalism in India. India was socialist. It liberated its markets a little bit in the 90s. And it refuses to liberate its economy completely. It is... Somebody says Yorkshire pudding is British cuisine. I said cuisine. It's not cuisine. And the only reason Gordon Ramsay became a good chef and took British food and made it into cuisine is because he brought French techniques and French sensitivities and cultural expropriation. Anyway, India needs more capitalism, more freedom, more respect for property rights, less caste system, more equality before the law, more viewing people as individuals, not as members of groups. So what India needs is a massive cultural expropriation from the Enlightenment. Needs freedom and property rights and an attitude towards wealth and success, a positive attitude towards wealth and success, and free markets. Michael asks, I notice a ton of Indians into objectivism. Do you think India could be their country where the movement really takes off? I doubt it. I mean, yes, there's a lot of Indians interested in objectivism, primarily because Ayn Rand's books were very popular there starting really in the 1960s and 70s and until today. But I don't see an Indian objectivist movement really being created, and I don't see as big as the numbers are in India. India is a massive country, still dominated by religion and nationalism and socialism. So very, very difficult to see India as being the country. I think it'll have to happen in a smaller country to begin with, where a small minority can have a disproportionate effect, rather than a big country where that minority would have to be pretty big to really have an impact. All right, let's see. What happened to my mouse? Mouse stopped working. All right, thanks everybody. If you want to ask a question, it has to be a $20 question. We've gone over an hour and a half. So if they're $20 questions, I'll take them now. Remember, you can support the show with your support through Super Chat. And we did fantastically well today in Super Chat without me bugging you and harassing you and begging you and asking you. So Ron, so far, is batting 1,000. So that's excellent. So thank you for all the Super Chatters. Thank you for their support. Thanks for all the questions, good questions. And I hope you enjoyed the show. If you do enjoy the show, then a better way to support the show, and this is particularly true of those of you who do not typically listen live and therefore not here to support the show through Super Chat. I know a lot of you, there are thousands who listen on the podcast. There are thousands who watch the show after it is broadcast live. I encourage all of you to support the show through a monthly contribution at yaronbrookshow.com/support. You can make a one-time contribution there as well, but a monthly contribution would be even better. You can also do it on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. So please consider supporting the show. It is possible because of your generosity, because of your support. Remember, it's value for value. If you get value from the show, it's great if you could express that value, if you can pay for that value by supporting the show financially on a monthly basis. So please do so. I very much appreciate it. You also get a bunch of perks, newsletters, all kinds of stuff like that. If you sign up, those of you who do more than $25 a month get a special Q&A. Those of you who do $100 a month get a separate special Q&A. So lots of opportunities to interact, lots of opportunities to do stuff. We intend to create more opportunities for live interaction and all kinds of events, especially for those who are regular supporters. So please go out there, yaronbrookshow.com/support, support the show. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Press the thumbs up button before you leave. It really helps with the algorithms. So really, 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 really would appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for the technical problems again earlier today. Who knows? My computer was doing stuff. I will talk to all of you guys tomorrow. Not sure exactly what time, but definitely have a show tomorrow, maybe during the day. For Europeans among you, so that Tessie doesn't have to stay up until 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. Bye, everybody.